Hi everyone, my name is CJ. Today I'm going to talk to you about shamanism. So, what is shamanism? There's no one definition, but basically it is an ancient tradition, practice, almost a type of religion, only it's not a religion because there is no one institution like the shamanic church or anything like that. It's ancient, so it predates religion, as far as archaeologists have been able to tell. Um, it is basically an energetic practice working with the spirit world through a direct connection to God or the divine or whatever you want to call that. So it's been around for thousands of years. Traditionally, back in tribal societies, there was usually one practitioner for every village, and this person was usually kind of an outcast or just like the weird person in the group, you know. So I fit right in with that. They were, despite their outcast status, they were considered vital for the community. In fact, they were probably the most revered person in the village because, people went to them for healing. There might have been an herbal healer within the group, but you went to your shaman for spiritual healing. So it was kind of like the same thing as a modern day counselor or something, but for the spiritual realm. So there's many different types of shamanic practices. We have people who do drumming journeys, people who do medicine work. So there's many different types, but I'm just going to tell you what my experiences have been. So back in my late 20s, early 30s, I went through a divorce and I was seeing a counselor at the time, and I became really depressed. And she was a really good, excellent counselor, and I learned a lot of coping skills through her. But I was starting to realize that I was in a codependent relationship, and I'm not going to go into explanation of that, but for whatever reason, I was at home and I was, just kind of Googling some of the things that I had learned through my counselor, and somehow I came up, I don't know if I was depression or what I was Googling. I mean, I was pretty depressed at the time, but I came across a website that talked about shamanism, and my ears kind of perked up. I was interested in a lot of different religions at the time and everything, so I'd never heard of that before, and I just kind of read through the articles, then started doing more searches on it, and this is interesting. So it was pretty coincidental because I went back to my counselor the next day or whenever, and I said, yeah, I heard about this thing called shamanism. And she said, well, I just happen to be a shamanic practitioner. And my jaw about dropped to the floor. So it's funny to me how these synchronicities happen. It's kind of like, I feel like that's guidance for me a lot of times. This happened to me so many times in my life where I've seen something on a certain subject, and then all of a sudden I see the same thing 3 times that day, and it's something that I never would have thought of. So that to me is always a signal, like, pay attention. This is important. We're trying to tell you something, we being your guides. So yeah, she told me about her practice a little bit, and I just felt, I don't know, I just felt like that was just kind of amazing that I ended up with this person, and she turned out to be very amazing and talented, and she kind of became my mentor after that. So I learned some things through her. I learned some things through some other people as well, but she, at one point, became interested in something called soul retrieval. So, what a shaman does is they go on shamanic journeys, which is where your astral body, your spirit, the spirit part of you, leaves your body and journeys to another place. Not really a place as in a physical place, but more on it's hard to explain, but like on a dimensional level. Like you're going somewhere else besides in your body, you know? So, she introduced me to someone who does what's called a soul retrieval. And a soul retrieval is where you go to a shaman. They go on a shamanic journey. And then they find pieces of you that, because of trauma or negative things that have happened in your life, parts of you have broken off throughout your lifetime and sometimes in past lives as well. And so the shaman goes and finds those pieces of you and retrieves them and brings them back to you, and you become more integrated. So, I mean, without getting into too much detail, basically whenever you have a trauma, you kind of dissociate, you go into a different place, and pieces of you can go off to that place and stay there. And so you might lose pieces of yourself, like at a young age, where you're a child, and so you've got a child part of yourself that's missing, and you don't really notice it, except that you just don't feel like who you used to be. So anyway, I went to this shamanic practitioner, whatever you want to call it, and she said, I'm going to do a drumming journey. A drumming journey is where music is played, or a drum beat is played at a fast pace. It puts you into a trance-like state. So you're laying on the floor, the bed, or whatever, and your mind goes into I can't remember which waves, theta waves or whatever, that puts you into a trance-like state. It's sort of like when you're drifting off to sleep, you know. And so she starts playing this drumming music. It's real fast-paced drumming music. And all I'm supposed to do is just lay there and close my eyes and wait for her to be done. That's all I'm supposed to do. She didn't tell me to try to picture anything or imagine anything or go on any journey with her. She was going to go do this, bring back my soul pieces, and then it was going to be over, you know? So while she's over there doing her thing, I have my eyes shut, and I'm listening to this drumming music, and all of a sudden, the face of a bear just appears right in my, like, you know, I call it your imagination. I don't know what it was, but it just appeared right in front of me. And I thought, that's interesting. So I was looking face to face with this bear, and it started to walk away from me. So I followed it, and I went down into this cave, and then it took me through this opening. Like, I just was following the bear. And so it took me all through this cave, and then I come out through this opening, and it's like all of a sudden I'm in a different place, but I'm in a field, and I don't know, it was just this long thing. So anyway, so we get done, and I'm telling her about this bear that appeared to me, and she says, that's your spirit animal. So that's basically my spirit animal. Didn't know what that was. It's just a guide. You can learn different things from different spirit animals. You can have different ones throughout your lifetime. You can have multiple spirit animals. And then I later, when I was researching this, of course, I find out that when a when a shaman goes on a journey, there's 3 levels of the world that you can go to. The middle world is kind of like the one that we're on right now, only it's in the astral plane. So it's just an altered version. It's like the spirit version of the world that we live in right now. I mean, if this sounds kind of like Lord of the Rings, I'm sure they probably based that on something shamanic, but then there's the upper world, which is, kind of like heaven, I guess. I'm not sure how to distinguish that, but and then there's something called the lower world, where you think of the lower world as kind of like hell, but it's not really. It's just kind of underneath the earth or in deeper layers. It's like going into your subconscious, basically. But I didn't make the connection until then that was the lower world that I went into. The bear took me down into a cave, which was the lower world. And then I emerged, and I don't know if I was back in the middle world or if I was still in the lower world. I don't know how that works. Really, I haven't researched enough, but it doesn't matter to me. So I just thought it was interesting that, I got confirmation later that was what you would expect to do on a shamanic journey. So anyway, that was my first real experience with shamanism, and I became fascinated with it later. I've always been interested in different religions. I'm not a practitioner of any particular religion, and shamanism isn't really a religion either. It's just kind of a way to work on an energetic level. It's also closely related to nature, so I'll get into that in a little bit. But basically, I learned more about it over the years. I learned from different people. I learned from different sources. I've tried different methods. I've tried medicine, shamanism. That was really fascinating. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. But then when I ended up moving a few years later, I moved back to my hometown, and it's kind of like in middle America, very conservative. There's not a lot of resources for people who are into more alternative type, spiritual practices. So I didn't know where to find anyone who would be interested in the same things as me. So I just kind of went online. I did a search of shamanism in my town, and I came up with the name of this person, and she said she did a shaman's apprentice program was what it was called. And I just thought, that's fascinating. So I ended up calling her, emailing her, something, and we started doing this program. And I'll describe it real basically for you. I don't think I have all the materials still, but I would be interested in doing this with other people at some point. So every day I was given a different assignment, and each assignment was based on a different animal, and each animal had a different message. And so I was supposed to read the assignment and then focus on that animal, meditate, whatever I needed to do to make that connection, and then go out for a walk every day and just kind of see what happens, So I did this. Every day I had a different animal. Every day I had a different message. And what I found fascinating about this whole thing was that I would go for these walks, and whatever animal I was supposed to be focusing on that day, a lot of times, if it was an animal that, obviously I'm not going to come across a bear where I live anyway, but a lot of these animals I would run into out in the woods as I was walking. It was just, and it would be just weird ways. So I'll give one example, okay? Some of them were birds, and I would see that kind of bird or whatever. But one day my animal was snake. So I'm walking down this trail. It's like a highly walked path. It's, you know, it's got concrete, you know, it's got a sidewalk and everything, like a sidewalk type of trail. So it's paved. And, but there's like little bridges that go over a little creek and everything. And I get to this, I get to this bridge and I look ahead of me and there's what looks like a snake on the ground, but it's just sitting there completely still, just right out in the open. So I walk up to it and it's like a little plastic toy snake that some kid or somebody had just like left out in the middle of the pathway. Now keep in mind, this is not my shamanic teacher's doing, because we actually had never actually met in person. She had no idea where I was going to be walking. So I didn't tell her that. I didn't give her those details. So it couldn't have been her. It's just so bizarre that I just got that exact animal right in the middle of the trail I was walking. It wasn't even real. It was just so auspicious, you know. So I don't know. I just, that happened a lot. Not, you know, not that exact experience, but just running into animals or hearing from animals, or even just seeing animals that I had read about, you know. So I did this until we got through the whole program. I can't remember how long it was, like a month or two. And then I think it was maybe a couple months. And then and then there was a time when I got coyote and I was out, you know, filling up my tank with gas or something, somewhere in a city kind of setting, and I hear this coyote. I mean, it's just things like that happen. So the very last lesson that I had was my goal was to dig a hole, lay in it, and stay in there for the whole night. So this was supposed to be a death and rebirth experience, because one of the things that usually happens when you become a shaman is you have a near-death experience, basically. I don't think that always happens, but that's one of the qualifications a lot of times for becoming a shaman. And so that was kind of supposed to be your death and rebirth experience. So I did that. I lived out in the country. I dug a hole. I brought some blankets and everything to make it as comfy as I could. It took a long time, because let me tell you, digging a hole big enough to lay in is it's quite a task. So anyway, so I laid in the hole, and as I'm laying in the hole, I lived out in the country on 13 acres. I hear coyotes. And I heard the coyotes coming closer, and then I heard them getting closer. And as time goes on, they get louder and louder, and next thing you know, it just sounds like they're just maybe, like, I don't know, 100 feet away or something. I mean, I know they were probably farther than that, but they came eerily close to my little grave that I dug for myself. So of course I'm laying there thinking, oh my gosh. Now I had two big dogs at the time. They were out there kind of watching, standing guard over my grave. But I think even they were a little nervous at that point. I mean, they were getting kind of nervous. So, but it was all good. I made it through the night, came up out of the hole. I can't tell you what lesson I learned from that. I don't even remember. But I feel like I'm kind of qualified to speak about shamanism, because I went through this whole, initiation process. And I've been practicing over the years. I mean, it's, I've had a lot of experience with this. So yeah, it just, shamanism helps you connect to the energetic world and connect to nature. And nowadays, I don't do drumming journeys like I used to. Most of the time I'm able to sit in meditation and I can feel the energy come down into my body, and so I feel I'm able to get connected to the spirit world that way. And I've met several of my guides After I met the bear, I've met several others. I've had a hooded guide. I've met an angel. I've met alien beings. I mean, I know it all sounds fairly weird, but and it is, but several of these beings have like incorporated themselves as my guides, and so some of the things that shamanism can help you do, aside from connecting energetically, meeting your guides, helps you connect to nature. It helps you to recognize synchronicities. Like I was saying earlier, whenever you see something that the same theme repeated over and over again throughout the day or over a period of a few days, that's a synchronicity, and that's a direct message. Pay attention, this is important. Since then, I've had psychic dreams. I'll get into maybe a video about that later. Now I'm able to feel energies and notice differences. Like I can feel energy in my body. I can tell when there's, needs to be a clearing maybe of negativity. I know how to protect myself from energies that might be of a more negative nature. I've had that happen before too. When I first started doing this, I was in a really bad place. And I used to get bombarded with negative energies that were drawn to my negative energy. So it was kind of scary. There were times when I was in a bad place and light bulbs would burst in my house, like several of them on the same night. I mean, I'm just saying this kind of stuff happens. And so I had to learn how to protect my energy and how to bring my energy up, bring my vibration up, because those kinds of beings are drawn to negative energy. So as long as I have had friends, other people who work with energies, and they are terrified of negative beings. And I just want to tell y'all, you don't have to worry about that. As long as you are not steering yourself into a negative place, as long as you're not going through depression. Now, if you are going through depression, I do recommend that you do some things to help raise your vibration and to maybe put a boundary up around yourself so that those things can't penetrate. But I'll get into that in a later video, possibly. But most people, you don't have to worry about that, because they can't take over you or anything like that. And there's things that you can do to protect yourself. I've also learned how to cleanse my energy, as I've said, and my chakras. And I do that on pretty much a daily basis now. And then I also I feel safe and I feel protected because I've got that established connection to my higher self, which is really your higher self is just the divine kind of split off into your individual being. So it's with you at all times. It's that part of you that's directly connected to source. And when you get connected to that, you feel safe and you feel protected. And even if things are turbulent around you, like right now with everything that's going on in the world, I'm able to connect to that, and it helps me to stay at peace. And like I said before, I've met many of my guides, and your guides can be very, very helpful. If you're able to sit in meditation and connect with them, you can ask them questions. They might sometimes give you answers, or you might just get the answers later in synchronicities, as I was saying. But it's just so helpful to know that there's some place where there's a way to get answers to your questions, you know what I'm saying? So, so yeah, I guess that's all I'm going to say about shamanism today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I might do another video to go into a little more detail. I do want to do one on protecting yourself. I think that's so important. That really has helped me through some difficult times when I did have some negative energies around me. So if you're interested in that, leave that in the comments. If you like this video, click like, and if you like my videos, click subscribe. Be sure and hit that little bell, and you'll get notifications of when I put up new videos. And yeah, so I hope to talk to you all soon, and I hope you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy, and have a great day.